Season 1 is all about that dental school student or that new dental school grad or that transitioning dentist, pretty much giving the financial keys to success now that you're in a transition period, right? There's a lot of new things, there's a lot of ambiguity, and we want to provide clarity. So if that sounds like you, or if you know anybody that is currently in that phase of life, go ahead and share this with them. And we cannot wait to provide value so that you can transition well, learn, grow, and be ready to take on this new phase of life here at the Generational Dental Wealth Show. So let's go and hop into this episode, and we hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, welcome to the Generational Dental Wealth Podcast. My name is Dr. Jermaine Ifedi.
And my name is Kingsley Ifedi, CPA. I think today is going to be a really good episode. Kind of a continuation in the conversation on seeing what is travel dentistry, what are some different options. You know, you've been saying this word travel dentistry for so long.
Yeah.
Like I've heard of travel nursing, right? I've heard of maybe other occupations doing travel or temp. But in your opinion, what is travel dentistry, and why would somebody even choose that path to go down versus the traditional routes?
So for decades and decades before I was even in dentistry, there was something called locum tenens dentistry, right? That just simply means basically a temporary dentist who is filling in, right? From that time, coming out and graduating, I saw it and I just felt like that could be so much more. Why can't that be a career destination versus just a temporary fix to a particular problem within dentistry? And from that time on, that's when I knew graduating from dental school that I want to travel. I want to be between different offices. I need to see as much as possible in that time because I knew private practice ownership is exactly where I wanted to do and what I wanted to get into. So I knew I needed to see as many see as many offices and get as many experiences as possible during that time. And it wasn't honestly until about 2020, I believe it was January, we're at a conference right before COVID shut everything down. And then I remember being on the stage and speaking on travel dentistry. And it wasn't until a older doc came into me and tell me, honestly, you coined the phrase travel dentistry. Wow. In my entire time within dentistry, I have never heard it. I've seen different components of it, but it's never been brought together in the way that it's been brought together now. And honestly, it's a pretty big honor to be able to contribute something to dentistry and to be able to leave and know that travel dentistry is something that wasn't necessarily put together all the way, and be able to know that a lot of young dentists will be able to come up after us and be able to practice as a travel dentist and take pride in that is truly a gift, honestly. So just to get into a little bit of the details of travel dentistry, what it truly is what it says, is dentistry on four wheels. Now, you might do it in a mobile bus or mobile van, or you might be driving to different locations to practice dentistry. So for myself, personally, even my first opportunity after dental school was, I remember we graduated and I got my license 3 weeks later and I was a travel dentist. My first experience was working between two different offices that were about 30 to 40 miles away from each other. And I would drive to each office. 1 week I was at one office, the next week I was at the other office, and I was traveling between the two different doctors. So they would have extra help on 1 week, and then the next week they would be solo again. And I would just be doing that. And that's when I figured out this is a great opportunity, because one of the office was Medicaid heavy and the other one was moving towards a fee-for-service model. So it gave me the opportunity to see both different dynamics on a bi-weekly basis. So 1 week I'm dealing with the challenges of a Medicaid practice, and next week I'm dealing with the challenges of a fee-for-service practice. And now I'm able to merge these two experiences together to figure out what it is, right? And that's what travel dentistry is. It's the ability to go to multiple locations and to be able to service different population bases on a continuing basis, right? The main difference between locum tenens dentistry and travel dentistry is the length of the contract, right? Not necessarily the time length, but as in, is this contract being renewed? Are you providing continual services to the place? Now, if it's just a one-off, 1 day, then you're more of a locums, right? A locum tenens dentist, and there's nothing wrong with that. And travel dentistry is more of understanding that this is a career path, right? The same way an associate works in a brick and mortar is the same way a travel dentist, probably either half or to a majority of their time, they're probably going between different geographic locations, right?
Yeah. And whenever we went and spoke at the conference a few months ago, whenever we were educating on people what travel dentistry looked like, what were the benefits behind it as far as financially, as far as tax wise, I could see people's eyes light up. Even till today, where I still get DMs, people asking me like, give me some different, tips and some different, things that you've seen, people do around it. So, I can definitely tell, and I truly believe that the whole world is moving towards this type of model, right? In many different industries, right? We see the advancement of Uber models and Airbnb models, and the using your talent, but also sharing it in a way that everybody gets the benefit off of that. And it's not necessarily in one fixed place. So with that being said, can you kind of speak to what is the day-to-day, I would say, on any given day as a travel dentist, what does that look like?
I want to touch back on what you said, right? The conference we were at was the ASDA Regional Conference. It was in last year, 2022.
Yep.
And they had over 150 dental students there. It was a great talk.
Just
to be able to speak on what travel dentistry is.
Yeah.
And their eyes were lighting up because, again, to be able to have so many mentors within dentistry, but never really hear what travel dentistry is, or to get it confused with locum tenens dentistry, it creates this disproportionality that maybe this is not a career path for me, right? So to answer the question that you asked on, what does the day-to-day look like for a travel dentist? Is it truly can change. Ultimately, there are going to be some commonalities. Number one, you're going to be starting your day and you're going to be ending your day, God willing, right? A few things in between. You might be taking a lunch break, but the biggest thing is you're arriving at a location. Let's say if it's day one, if I'm arriving at a new location that I've never been at before, then I'm arriving at the location. Usually I like to arrive about 30 minutes early so I can get in and be able to meet the staff, right? Meet the team, figure out who are the key players that I need to make sure I make a good impression with, to make sure I have their support throughout the rest of the day, right? I know we like to come into situations and think, hey, because I'm a dentist, they're going to respect you. But in reality, that's not how it really works in the real world. They have to still come in, be able to present yourself in a respectable manner, and to be able to get the team to buy into the vision that you're moving forward with. Now, the question is, how strong is the culture that you're coming into, right? Are you just filling in, let's say, for a week every month? Or are you filling in for one day? Depending on what the capacity of your contract and what it looks like will determine how much you're trying to change and how much you want to help shift to move the practice in a certain direction, right? For myself personally, I was known as the practice fixer. When I was coming into the situation, it was usually practices that were either number one, closing down, or number two, would not be open unless I was there. So most situations I came into were honestly very distraught. So I would come in, and that's the reason I would get there 30 minutes early, because I need to assess the situation to figure out how out of it is this staff, how out of it is this office, to figure out what do we need to do to be able to push and pull certain levers, right? So from just a leadership perspective, you're coming in and you're shaking the hands, you're coming in, you're telling every patient who you are because they've never seen you before, right? Don't just come in and just do the dentistry. And that's the reason on the first weeks on new assignments, I'm usually taking my time, extra time, to be able to talk to the patients, to be able to form that kind of connection to make them feel comfortable, right? Because when the team sees that you care about their patients, they're going to buy into you quicker. And the quicker they buy into you, the quicker you're able to now get the things you need done. So on a day-to-day on a dentist, again, if it's a first day, I'm doing more of shaking hands, kissing babies. I need to figure out what's going on. I need to figure out who are the leaders within this organization, right? Let's say week 2, then now I'm moving to more in, okay, now let's worry about the dentistry flow, right? The team has bought in, or in some cases they have not bought in, but either way, we got to get to work. And now, subconsciously, I need to still continue to keep on working on the team. Maybe I need to buy them lunch. Maybe I need to figure out whatever it is. Again, it's all determined on how long and what the contract looks like.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that perspective. And, even, there's so many clinical benefits. There's so many career and professional benefits for travel dentistry. Do you want to kind of hop into the financial side and how travel dentistry can really change the financial landscape of your?
I mean, you could ask me that question, or I can ask you that question. And the first thing I would do is hop on the phone with you, Kingsley, and say, hey, listen, how should I go about making sure I get this done right? But let's say when somebody is, like for myself, right? How do I structure myself? Let's start from a globular perspective, like a high level view of what's the difference between a 1099 and a W-2 employee.
Got you. So a W-2 employee is typically going to be a day-to-day type of employee inside the business. So each state is different on labor laws, but typically what we see is as a W-2 employee, you have your schedule dictated a little bit more. As a W-2 employee, you have certain benefits, health benefits, you have 401k match, you have you are not necessarily coming into the business as a outside entity or outside person. You are a part of the business as a day-to-day employee. So the biggest two things, like I said, is taxes are taken out of your check as a W-2 employee, and they are now paid to the IRS, but your employer is doing that for you. And on the flip side, typically your employer is going to be offering some type of additional benefits, whether that is 401k match, whether that is health insurance, whatever that looks like. Now, as a 1099 contractor, you're more so coming from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
You don't have your schedule dictated as much, and you pretty much have a lot more flexibility in your day-to-day operate.
Okay.
Now, as a 1099 contractor, you fill out a W-9 with the person or the practice that's looking to bring you in, and they don't take out taxes out of your check every month. They don't ever really provide health benefits or 401k match. But on the flip side, even though they don't provide those benefits, you typically get your check in gross amounts, right? If you're on a 200K salary as a W-2 employee, you might only see 160K of that. But if you're a 1099 contractor, you're typically going to get that 200K up front because you're not having taxes taken out or any other 401k matches going on, right? So it's kind of two sides of the same coin, just trying to figure out what is the most beneficial for you.
That's the reason one of the things that we really focus on when somebody is doing 1099 contracting, to be able to make sure that they do have some type of 5 to 10% buffer added into their compensation so they can cover certain benefits that are not covered. Yeah. Right. So again, that's just one of the things you want to sit down with somebody so they can really break down the contract to make sure you're not being compensated as a W-2 while being responsible for everything as a 1099.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of expenses to incur. Let's say if you're now responsible for your health insurance, your dental insurance, your 401k, you're responsible for your malpractice, all these different expenses you're taking on, but you're still operating on the income of a W-2.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to take it one step further, the benefits financially as a 1099, and we can kind of dive a little bit deeper because I think that's the side that most people are not accustomed to. You get certain tax benefits, namely a write-off. What a write-off is essentially a business expense, right? Not every expense that you have in your life will be a write-off, but if it's personal in nature, let's say you're traveling or you're doing some shopping for you personally, it's typically not going to be a write-off, right? We want expenses to always be business. They have some type of business use or business value. Now, typically as a W-2 employee, you don't really get these write-offs, right? Because the IRS now sees you as a 1099 contractor as a small business. Most people have a misconception that, I didn't apply for any business. I'm not a business. But the IRS sees you as a sole proprietor. And you're going to be filing your taxes, or pretty much you are responsible now as a 1099 contractor for conducting yourself like a small business. And like I said, typically with the write-offs, it's really important that you're stepping into a new lane. You have some type of professional guidance, or you do some type of continuing education to say, okay, what is a legal write-off, right? What are some different credits that I can get as a business owner? And let me make sure that I walk this path now because this is a different path that I'm not used to.
So right. First of all, that's a lot of game you just gave.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm grateful that you do hold your weekly morning calls, that if somebody does have questions before they go into the workplace, they can hop on there and ask those particular questions. But more importantly, I want to break down write-offs into two categories, right? Number one, how does a write-off affect your life as far as what can you write off? Let's start there. And then number two, I want to ask, how do you actually benefit financially from a write-off? Because most people want to know, what can you write off, right? And I do want to preface this by saying, listen, consult with your own CPA. He's my CPA, but consult with your CPA and make sure whatever you're writing off is actually legal, okay? But if you can hop into what are some things that legally people you have helped be able to write off?
Yeah, so just starting with the basic everyday life, right? We want to make sure that we're capturing you now as a 1099 contractor, right? Your malpractice insurance, right? Any type of insurance that you have as far as to conduct your business. From the standpoint, pretty much we're looking, is this a business expense that is used to now grow your 1099 position, right? Next thing that we're looking at is to try to figure out what type of miles are you putting on your car? Typically when it comes to, business miles, you're able to take about 60 cents, and it does vary from year to year. And you're able to now apply that to your taxes as a write-off, right? So for example, let's say you drive 10,000 miles as a travel dentist. We multiply that by 60 cents. Your write-off is now $6,000.
Okay.
Now there is a different way that we can look at vehicles, right? We can take the actual method, which now that is saying, okay, how much percent do you use the vehicle for your 1099 position? What are all of your actual expenses? So that is maintenance, that is oil changes, that is car washes, that is pretty much anything that goes, gas, stopping by the gas station, anything that goes into you, having your services vehicle. What is the percentage base of how much you drive this car? And depending on that, it's depending on how much we can take now as a write-off when it comes to taxes. A lot of little ones out there, including even cell phone bill, even though that does have a personal nature, we have to sit down and say, okay, how much percentage do you use this for business, right? Talking to patients now, right? Maybe negotiating contracts. You may say in a given year, use your cell phone for 25% for business. So there are fractional, or I would say personal and business expenses that we can take a look at that honestly most business owners and for sure most 1099 contractors miss out on. Okay. Now, obviously you have all of the usual ones. I mean, the data ones, maybe you're going out to eat with one of the patients or one of the associates that you're working along with, or maybe you're just going to now meet as far as figuring out how you can get more contractors, okay, right? There are certain meals that are now a business write-off, right? Up to a certain percentage on certain years that you can now take like that.
So let me ask you this question, right? So it was, I believe last month, we had a conference in New Orleans, right? Yeah. And one of the things that you told me is make sure you keep your receipts on everything and write down everybody that was present for these particular talks, right? So I want you to try to walk somebody through going to a conference. How do you write off a conference?
Yeah, great question. So essentially what we're talking about right now is business travel. So what the IRS says, this is a legitimate business expense because you have to travel to conduct your business, right? So let's say you're going to a conference, let's say to speak, or, you are trying to get some CE, whatever the case is, right? So first we have to look at what's your airfare like? How are you getting there? Typically some type of plane ticket. Let's make sure that we account for that correctly, right? The Ubers that you're taking from place to place, depending on, how are you getting around, make sure that that's a write-off, right? Depending on where you're staying, if you're lodging anywhere, making sure, the hotel or Airbnb, VRBO, whatever that is, make sure we're accounting for that correctly as well.
So you can write that off? Yeah.
And then pretty much the business meals while you are on this travel, making sure that we're getting those accounted for as well so that we can get those write-offs. And honestly, one of the biggest ones is probably the cost of attending the conference. If this is some type of CE, I mean, even these days that conferences can cost thousands of dollars. So we want to make sure that we consider that a business write-off, right? So for tax season, right, we're making sure that we're getting everything accounted for correctly.
Wow. So you're saying basically, right, because mentally when you're planning on going to a conference, there's a few major expenses. Just to recap what you said, the conference that we're going to, you can write that off. The airfare you're taking, you can write that off. Where you're lodging, you can write that off. Whatever you drive, you can write it off. And the biggest premise is to make sure that the reason you're going there is business in nature, to further your business. Yeah. And if you're doing that, then now you can write it off.
Yeah, because the IRS wants to benefit you because they believe in small businesses, right? Small businesses fuel the economy, puts more money back into the economy. And eventually when you become a big business, you begin to employ people, right? So everything that you're doing, the IRS wants to be a part of and pretty much subsidize the fact that you're a small business now.
That's really good. So let's take this to a practical standpoint, right? Let's say they're a 1099 contractor making $150,000 on a contract that they're working all year, right? How do they go about writing certain things off, and what kind of benefit would that actually make? Let's say if a W-2 made 150 and a 1099 made 150. Show me how the bottom line would look different.
Got you. So typically, if you are on salary for $150,000, before you ever receive your check, there's something called FICA. There's something called employee withholdings that's going to be taken out of your check. So over a given year, let's say $150,000 as a W-2 employee, you might only see $120,000 actually hit your bank account. At that point, right? And that's very conservative. I mean, it might even be closer to 100,000 depending on if you have benefits and everything like that. But so the thing about it, once you get paid that gross amount, like I said, after taxes, $120,000, at that point as a W-2 employee, you go live your life, right? You go buy food for your family. You go buy food for your kids. You go do the things that you are doing day to day with the net amount after taxes. Now, as a self-employed or 1099 contractor, the IRS says, hold on, wait a minute. We don't want to tax you first. What we're going to do is we're going to let you say, okay, all of these expenses that you have as write-offs. Let's just say that it's $50,000, all in write-offs, right? What the IRS says is before we tax you, we want you to go ahead and reduce that amount down on your taxes. So you show $150,000, right, as income. Then you do $50,000 as business write-offs. The IRS essentially says, okay, now you only have $100,000 left, and that's what we're going to tax you on. So in summary, as a W-2 employee, you get taxed first, then you get your income, then you go spend things on what you need. As a 1099 contractor, you get your income, you spend whatever you need to conduct your 1099 business and everything that is a business write-off. And then whatever is left over, that is what they tax you on. So in this example, your income is $120,000, and that's what you're being taxed on versus being taxed on $100,000, which your income is lower for tax purposes. That's a good thing.
Okay, I don't want to get too numbery on a podcast, right? Yeah. But you're saying if somebody makes $150,000 as a W-2 employee, and they're paying 20% taxes, they're left with about $120,000, meaning $30,000 in taxes, right? Yeah. Let's say an individual is a 1099 contractor, and they have written off what they're going to write off. And basically, they went from $150,000 down to $100,000 of income, right?
Yep.
That's how much profit was made, correct?
Yeah.
So if they're taxed at 20%, that means that they're going to owe $20,000.
Yeah.
So on one hand, the W-2 paid $30,000 in taxes, and the 1099 is paying $20,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
So you're saying that $10,000 difference is because you're able to write off business expenses?
Yeah. Essentially, you don't get taxed first. You get to go spend what you need to spend, and whatever's left over. Now the IRS looks at, okay, we're going to tax that amount. Yeah.
I think we're so used to just seeing a paycheck and like whatever's left of it. And that's what we operate based off of. And again, that's why being a 1099 contractor or a travel dentist, you have to get used to seeing gross amounts, like seeing the entire amount. Because if you don't do what you need to do, because understand with great responsibility, you have to really take care of that, right? Yeah. You don't want to get your full pay, your whole $150,000 and ball out.
Yeah.
Then when it's time for that $20,000 tax bill to be paid, number one, you didn't keep no paperwork. You didn't keep no receipts. You didn't keep anything. You're not paying any taxes. And now you at the end, you like, I don't have $20,000 to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see that so many times every year. I have $150,000 on this 1099. And I say, hey, okay, boom, your taxes owed is $20,000. Oh, I don't have that amount. I've already spent it. Right. And then now, so we're trying to figure out, what does it look like for this person to move forward, set up some type of payment plan with the IRS. But we want to make sure that you're responsible, because essentially as a 1099 contractor, you're responsible for estimated tax payments. Yeah. Right. So it is a bit of a burden. But if you, like I said, can work with a financial professional to mitigate these burdens on you, it's well worth the transition.
It's worth $10,000.
Yeah, it is.
So the biggest thing that I remember, even from day one, you were saying that, hey, listen, I want you to put away 20% of everything. Yeah. We're going to create this special tax account that 20% of whatever the gross amounts you get is going to go into this account. And then I still remember that first time because it was too much. So we ended up paying the government, and I was left with that difference because I'm treating it like, hey, I'm paying the full 20% on the entire amount. So again, it's just important to make sure you structure yourself properly, because when you do structure it properly, guess what? You get bonuses. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, imagine getting to the end of the year and figuring out that you actually saved $10,000 more than you were supposed to save.
Yeah.
That's a good Christmas.
And I'm with you. So kind of bringing it back home, the top 3 takeaways as far as on the financial side of travel dentistry. First, you really want to make sure that you understand the stipulations behind what you're doing. You're a small business now. You want to conduct yourself as such. You're no longer an employee. Nobody's there to pretty much do any hand holding. Now, number 2, and honestly, this is the part that, I want to make sure people understand, is you need to make sure that there's some type of bookkeeping. You don't want to live your life as a travel dentist out out from the standpoint of just your bank statements, right? You want to make sure that through bookkeeping, you're tracking the income that's coming in and you're tracking all of your expenses that are business write-offs. And that's going to help you come tax time where you're not scrambling and you're missing out on all of these deductions, and you pretty much lose the benefit of being a 1099 contractor in the beginning. And then number three, you want to make sure, like I said, that you sit down with a financial professional and you get these business taxes done correctly, right? And there's just so many other little nuances, right? And we're not even talking about entity selection, right?
Hold on, let's back up. You said business taxes.
Yeah.
So real quick, so you're saying that they don't just file a regular tax filing like everybody else?
No,
Just be briefing. Tell me what's the difference? How many taxes are they going to have to file?
So pretty much, let's just pretend that you're a sole proprietor, which you are automatically by default. You're going to need to file something called a Schedule C tax return along with your personal tax return, which is a 1040. At that point on the Schedule C, you'll now claim that 1099 income that you'll get at the end of the year. But on that Schedule C, you now list out all of your different expenses so that it can show you, okay, this was what came in, this was all of the expenses, this is what's left over.
So that's how you tell the government where your write-offs occurred on that Schedule C. That's how you communicate that to them.
Yeah, that's how you communicate that with them, right? And you're not responsible as a W-2 employee to be able to do that. So this is a whole different world you're stepping into. And now the legalities behind what you're reporting becomes that much more serious because the government is effectively giving you a benefit for doing this, right?
That's really good. That's really good. So we'll hop into that whole thing. When it comes tax time, we'll have to sit you back down and we'll have to really hop into the nuances of what that looks like. But right now, this is an action-packed episode. This is one of the ones you're going to have to listen to probably 2 or 3 times.
A few times.
Yeah. This is not one of those 2-time speed type episodes. You slow it down, take notes, and really get into it. And for myself personally, the biggest thing is to all my travel dentists out there, just know you have support and you have help. On the clinical aspect of things, if things don't make sense to you, if you feel like you're looking at contracts that just don't make sense, you can send anything over to me, to Dr. MBA LLC, at Dr. MBA LLC. I don't charge anything. I'll help you look at whatever I possibly can, as long as time permitting. Understand, I do get busy, so forgive me on that. So understand that it's not the easiest path, right? But what I will say, it does provide a level of freedom. If you do enjoy traveling, if you do enjoy not knowing necessarily everything about your day, are you a little bit more adventurous? If you have these different parts of your personality that you want to express, travel dentistry can be amazing. Now, I do want to preface this by saying travel dentistry is not for everybody. Yeah. If you do not like driving, if you do not like unknowns, if you do not like meeting new people, meeting new patients, if those are the kind of things that add a little bit of anxiety to your day, then travel dentistry is probably not for you. And that's the whole premise of the Generational Dental Wealth podcast. It's not to tell you what to do. It's to help you understand what are certain things that maybe you have not looked into that you can tap into, and what are other things that you just know are not for you. So now by listening to this episode, you might be thinking to yourself, now I know travel dentistry is probably not for me, or travel dentistry is for me. And that's our only goal, right? As we continue to go through this series and continue to go through more episodes, we're going to touch and highlight a lot of different components that do range from travel dentistry to locums to practice ownership to building teams to different things like that. So now you can figure out what are different areas that I identify with and what are different areas that I can continue to manifest within myself.
Awesome. Well, today was fun, and we look forward to seeing you back at the Generational Dental Wealth podcast.
Checking out. Peace.
See ya.